Professional players like to throw max weight discs, or at least that's what we're often told. And what this does is create a ripple effect in the disc golf community, making a lot of people buy max weight discs in hopes that they will be able to throw just like the professionals. What a lot of people don't know is that a lot of these professionals carry lighter discs for specific instances or specific shots. Therefore, there are many reasons when you would want to throw a lighter disc versus a heavier disc and vice versa, but that decision can be difficult to make. So how does someone like you know when to use a lighter or heavier disc? Well, today on JustDisc, we're going to answer exactly that, so let's get into it. Now, before we get into when to throw a heavier disc versus a lighter disc, let's talk about the disc weight ranges. So disc weights range from about 150 grams all the way up to 180. Now, those 180 grams are usually mid-ranges, sometimes putters, and drivers usually max out at about 175. Now, if you're on the lower end of like lighter discs, that's usually for people who are new, not a lot of power, not a lot of technique, or they're just really young, they're a kid. Those usually will benefit from the 150 grams. Now, anywhere from 160 to 175 is usually for most players. And I would say the sweet spot, the ideal weight for the average player is around 168 grams. So the average player with an average throw is gonna do well with 168 grams, and then you can go from there. So there are many instances when a player would want to throw a lighter disc. So the first instance would be if you're a beginner or you just lack that form. You don't practice that often. A lighter disc is definitely going to help you. It's going to glide longer, it's going to stay in the air longer, and you're just going to get more distance with less effort. Another instance would be if you are playing disc golf in the wintertime, because cooler air is actually denser and it creates a bit of a drag on the disc. So if you have a lighter disc, it's still gonna be dragged by that cool air, but it's gonna still fly further. Another time you want to use a lighter disc is on a windy day when you have a tailwind behind you, because we all know with the tailwind it's going to push the disc further down the fairway, allowing for more distance. But be careful, a lot of people don't know this, but with a tailwind your disc becomes more overstable. So if you're throwing right hand backhand, the disc wants to fade early to the left. So if you use an understable disc, like for instance my Mystère, and you also hyzer flip it with a tailwind, that's how you get those really big bomb shots that we're all looking for when we have the room and the space to do it. You also want to throw a lighter disc when throwing uphill, because a heavier disc is not going to stay in the air as long than a lighter disc. You're just going to get that much more glide. And also, don't forget, if you want the disc to slow down a little bit quicker, you're going to want to use a lighter disc as well, because heavier objects take longer to slow down. So the next time you're approaching the basket and maybe there's an OB behind, think about that. Maybe that lighter disc is the better option so that you don't go OB. And the last and final reason to throw a lighter disc over a heavy disc is if distance is much more important to you than accuracy. Especially if you're playing at a course that is very open and there's almost no OB, that is definitely the time to throw your lighter disc than the heavy ones. So now that we've looked at when to throw lighter discs, let's look at when to throw those heavier discs. And the first and main reason is if you are an experienced player with a lot of power and who puts a lot of spin on the disc, because if you use those lighter discs, it's going to be just too understable, and if you're throwing right hand backhand, it's just going to want to turn over to the right and you're not going to be able to use your maximum amount of power. You are also going to want to throw a heavier disc when the temperature is hot outside, because unlike cooler air, hotter air is less dense and therefore puts less drag on the disc. And so that's why with so many sports that are out there in warmer temperatures, things just fly further. Another instance is when you are throwing downhill, because a disc flying downhill is going to have increased speed. And with increased speed, that makes the disc more understable. So a more heavy disc is going to control that angle a little bit better, it's going to be a little bit more stable, and it's not going to get pushed around as easily. Another instance to use a heavier disc is if you're looking for a skip shot when the disc lands on the ground. Because as mentioned previously, a heavier disc is going to take longer to slow down. So skip shots are obviously great for, getting around those corners or just getting the disc just a little bit closer to the target. It's also important to carry heavier discs for your putters and your mid-ranges because those discs are meant for placement. They're meant for accuracy and not distance. And I would say that it's especially important for those putters because you do not want the wind pushing that putter around, and you also don't want to avoid a certain amount of power so that the disc doesn't turn over to the right. So a heavier disc is just going to be that much more beneficial. And the last and final reason to use a heavier disc would be if accuracy is much more important to you than power. Because a heavier disc is easier to get the timing of release because there's more feel, there's more weight to it. It's just easier to control, especially if you are into a headwind, because wind is just going to want to move the disc around and a heavier disc is just going to stay that much more stable. Let's summarize what we've learned. Lighter discs are easier to get up to speed, easier to get spin on the disc, which therefore translates to more distance. However, they are easily affected by the wind, and if you're trying to throw at a faster speed, they show more of your errors. They're kind of more finicky on your release angle. On the other hand, heavier discs require more power and snap to get that spin, to get that disc gliding in the air, but they don't show your flaws as much. They're not as finicky on the release angle, and they're less affected by the wind. So after hearing all of those reasons, we at JustDisc hope that you feel that much more informed. And if you have any questions or there are things that we forgot, don't forget to let us know in the comments below. And if you want more videos just like this one, make sure you are subscribed. Can't wait to make the next one for you guys. We'll see you in the next one. Merci beaucoup et à bientôt.